"Get away from my car. I need a professional, not a man from the sidewalk," Ethan Blackwood snapped, loud enough for everyone beneath the glass awning of Meridian Tower to hear. Samuel Carter stood in the rain with a torn brown coat hanging from his shoulders, gray hair plastered to his forehead, and a plastic grocery bag tied around one wrist to keep his few belongings dry. His boots were split at the sides. His beard was uneven. One hand held an old canvas tool roll so worn the corners had gone soft. The other hand was raised gently toward the fogged window of a black electric sedan where an 8-year-old girl was crying behind locked glass. Inside the car, Lily Blackwood pressed both palms to the window. "Daddy!" she screamed, her voice thin with panic. "I can't breathe!" The rain hammered the roof so hard it sounded like stones. Red brake lights smeared across the wet street. A security guard held an umbrella over Ethan's shoulder, but Ethan did not feel the rain anymore. His $7,000 suit was soaked. His private assistant was shouting into 3 phones. His driver kept jamming the emergency key into a hidden panel that refused to release. And the homeless man Ethan had just insulted looked not at the billionaire, but at the child. "She has maybe minutes before the panic makes the breathing worse," Sam said quietly. "Stop pulling the handle. You're jamming the latch deeper." Ethan turned on him. "I said move." But within 11 minutes, Ethan Blackwood would be kneeling in the gutter, holding a flashlight for that same homeless man. Within 11 minutes, the door would open. And within 11 minutes, the billionaire who believed every crisis had a price tag would learn that the man he dismissed as useless had once designed safety systems men like Ethan paid fortunes to own. But at 9:42 p.m., Ethan still believed power meant being obeyed. That was the mistake. The storm had swallowed Midtown Manhattan whole. Rain came sideways between the towers, slapping the glass walls of Meridian Tower and turning the black pavement into a mirror of headlights, sirens, and trembling neon. Traffic on West 47th Street had collapsed into a bright, furious knot. Taxis honked, delivery bikes cut between stalled cars. Somewhere down the avenue, an ambulance wailed without moving fast enough to matter. Meridian Tower rose above it all, 62 floors of steel, glass, and money. At the top was Blackwood Technologies. At the curb was Ethan Blackwood's car, a Voltura Asterion S7, fully electric, armored glass, biometric lock system, private climate control. Retail price before customization, $312,000. The kind of car designed to make rich people feel safer than everyone else. Tonight, it had become a cage. Lily Blackwood had been waiting in the back seat for 17 minutes. She was 8 years old, small for her age, wearing a blue raincoat over her school concert dress. Her hair was tied with a silver ribbon. On the seat beside her was a little velvet pouch holding an inhaler, a folded program from the piano recital Ethan had missed, and a handmade card with crooked letters. "Daddy, I saved you a front seat." Ethan had not seen the card yet. He had walked out of a $2.8 billion acquisition meeting at 9:38 p.m., angry because the board call had run long. His jet slot at Teterboro was in danger, and Victor Hale, his private assistant, had failed to move the evening fast enough. Ethan Blackwood was 44, sharp-faced, controlled, and famous for building companies the way other men built walls. His calendar was measured in 15-minute blocks. His phone never slept. His employees described him as brilliant when he was in the room and impossible when he left it. He was the sort of man who did not ask for things twice, until the car would not open. "Unlock it," Ethan said first. The driver, Malcolm Reese, pressed the key fob. Nothing. "Again," Malcolm pressed. The car lights flashed once. The locks did not release. From inside, Lily looked up from her tablet. "Daddy?" Ethan pulled the rear handle. It stayed flush, dead against the door. Victor stepped forward with an umbrella and 2 phones. "Probably a power cycle issue, sir. I'm calling Voltura Concierge." Ethan yanked again. "Malcolm, use the manual override." Malcolm crouched beside the rear quarter panel, rain running down his shaved head. He opened a small hidden compartment near the wheel arch and inserted the emergency key. It turned halfway, then stopped with a hard metallic click. Lily's eyes widened. "Daddy, why won't it open?" "It's fine," Ethan said. He always said that. To investors, to engineers, to Lily, to himself. It was fine until someone found the number that solved it. Victor had Voltura on one phone, private security on another, and building operations on the third. "Vehicle concierge says they can remote reset if the cabin network responds," he said. Ethan looked at the dark dashboard through the fogging glass. "It isn't responding." "They're escalating to engineering. Escalate faster." "FDNY is delayed because of the storm traffic. NYPD unit is 6 blocks out." Ethan slammed his palm against the door. "Lily, can you hear me?" She nodded, crying now. "The air stopped," she said. "It didn't stop. The car is sealed, sweetheart. You're safe." "I'm hot." The climate system had shut down with the electrical fault. The windows would not lower. The doors would not release. The cabin display was black. A faint mist spread across the inside of the glass from Lily's breath. Then came the first cough, small, sharp. Ethan froze. "Lily?" She coughed again, then reached toward the velvet pouch on the seat. "My inhaler." Ethan's stomach dropped. The pouch had slid off the seat and into the rear footwell, just out of reach beneath the front console. Lily stretched for it, but her seatbelt caught her shoulder. "Daddy, I can't reach." Ethan turned to Malcolm. "Break the window." Malcolm looked at the armored glass. "Sir, it's reinforced. We need a rescue tool." "Then get one." Victor was already shouting into the phone. "We need emergency extraction at Meridian Tower. Child locked inside electric vehicle. Possible asthma distress. Yes, breathing difficulty. Yes, we need fire rescue now." Rain drummed harder. People had begun to gather beneath the awning. Security guards, office workers, a woman holding a takeout bag, 2 interns from Blackwood Technologies who recognized their CEO but did not dare speak. 1 doorman, and across the street, under the dark awning of a closed pharmacy, a man who had been invisible to all of them 5 minutes earlier lifted his head at the sound of Lily's cough. Samuel Carter had been sleeping there before the storm worsened. Not fully sleeping. Men who sleep outside rarely do. He had been sitting with his back against the pharmacy gate, coat pulled tight, tool roll under one arm, listening to the rain and the low thunder of city traffic. Beside him sat a cracked radio he had repaired for the fruit vendor on 46th Street. In his pocket was a tiny yellow hair clip wrapped in cloth. He carried it everywhere. The hair clip belonged to Grace, but no one on West 47th Street knew that. To them, Sam was only another homeless man under another awning. One more person to step around. Then Lily screamed. Not loudly at first, but Sam heard the sound beneath the rain. A child's fear has a frequency grief never forgets. He stood, slowly. His knees protested. His back ached from the cold pavement. His left hand trembled as he picked up the canvas tool roll. He crossed the street between 2 stalled cabs while a driver cursed at him. A security guard saw him approaching and moved immediately. "Back up," the guard said. "This is a private emergency." Sam looked past him at the car. "Electric lock failure?" The guard frowned. "I said back up." Sam stepped around him, eyes narrowing at the rear door seam. Dashboard dead, handles not presenting, manual key half-turned and stuck, cabin sealed. She's panicking. Ethan turned, furious. "Who is this?" Victor glanced at Sam and recoiled slightly, not dramatically, but enough. "Sir, just someone from the street." Sam heard it. He had heard worse. He kept looking at the car. "The manual override is fighting the secondary latch," he said. "If you force it, you'll shear the release pin." Malcolm stopped turning the key. Ethan looked between Sam and the driver. "What did he say?" Sam pointed to the lower seam of the rear door. "The actuator failed mid-lock. The emergency release is probably loaded, but the latch sensor still thinks the door is in crash secure mode." Victor muttered, "This is absurd." Sam ignored him. He stepped closer to the window. Lily was crying harder now, one hand pressed to her chest. Sam softened his voice. "Hey, sweetheart, look at me." Ethan moved between them. "Do not talk to my daughter." Sam looked at him then, for the first time, not with anger, with something older. "Then you talk to her." Ethan turned to the glass. "Lily, Daddy's here. Just breathe." "I can't," she cried. The words broke through the rain. For 1 second, Ethan Blackwood's face changed completely. The CEO vanished. The negotiator vanished. The man who could buy buildings, bury competitors, move markets, and command rooms of adults vanished. Only the father remained, terrified, useless, wet. He grabbed the door handle and pulled again, hard enough that his shoulder jerked. Sam snapped, "Stop!" The word cut across the awning. Ethan turned slowly. People around them went quiet. No one spoke to Ethan Blackwood like that. Not employees, not investors, not Victor, not even board members. Sam pointed at the latch. "You are making it worse." Ethan's eyes burned. "My daughter is trapped in there." "I know." "You know nothing." Sam's jaw tightened. A flash moved across his face. Pain, not pride. "I know what a child sounds like when she is running out of calm." Ethan said nothing. The sentence had found the part of him panic had left open. Victor leaned in. "Mr. Blackwood, we cannot let this man tamper with the vehicle. Liability alone." Ethan rounded on him. "Liability?" Victor froze. "My daughter is locked inside a dead car in a storm, and you are saying liability?" The assistant swallowed. "I'm saying trained responders are on the way." Sam looked down the street at unmoving traffic. "How far?" Victor checked the phone. "FDNY says 5 to 7 minutes. Sam listened to Lily cough again. "Too long." Ethan turned back. "What do you need?" Victor blinked. "Sir." Ethan did not look at him. "What do you need?" Sam knelt beside the rear door. Rain immediately soaked through the knees of his pants. A small flathead screwdriver, a flashlight, something thin and rigid like a metal ruler or windshield scraper. "And stop letting him touch that key." Malcolm released the emergency key as if it had burned him. Victor hesitated. Sam looked up. "Now." Ethan pointed at the doorman. "Get it." The doorman ran inside. A security guard handed over a flashlight. Malcolm found a small screwdriver in the trunk of the lead security car. Victor produced a steel letter opener from his leather document folder with visible disgust. Sam took each item without comment. He set his canvas tool roll on the wet pavement and unwrapped it. Inside were not random scraps. They were old tools, cleaned, sharpened, arranged carefully. Picks, pliers, a tiny inspection mirror, electrical tape, a bent feeler gauge, a small handmade hook filed from spring steel. Ethan noticed despite the rain. So did Malcolm. So did Victor, though he refused to show it. Sam leaned close to the door. He tapped the panel twice near the latch, then lower, then pressed his ear against the metal. Lily sobbed behind the glass. Sam lifted his head. "Sweetheart, can you hear my voice?" Lily nodded weakly. "What's your name?" "Lily." "Hi, Lily. I'm Sam. Your dad is right here. I'm going to make the door click, but I need you to do one job." "What?" "Look at my hand. Not the door, not the rain, just my hand." Sam raised 2 fingers and slowly breathed in. "In." Lily tried to copy him. He lowered the fingers. "Out." Ethan stared. He had paid child psychologists, private tutors, travel nannies, pediatric specialists, and breathing coaches after Lily's first asthma scare. But in that moment, in the rain, a man with no home spoke to his daughter more gently than Ethan had managed all week. That hurt in a place Ethan did not have language for. Sam turned to him. "You." Ethan blinked. "What?" "Hold the flashlight here, low angle, not in her eyes." Victor stepped forward. "I can do that." Sam did not look at Victor. "No, her father can." The words landed hard. Ethan took the flashlight. For the first time in years, someone gave him a task that money could not outsource. He knelt in the gutter beside Sam. Rainwater soaked through the fabric of his suit. His knee pressed into a puddle. The flashlight beam shook in his hand. Sam glanced once at the shaking light. "Steady." Ethan clenched his jaw and steadied it. The billionaire obeyed. The crowd under the awning said nothing. Sam inserted the thin metal strip between the door seal and the frame. Not forcing, feeling, listening. He angled the inspection mirror, used the filed hook, and moved slowly along the lower latch channel. Every few seconds he paused and asked Lily to breathe with him. In, out. In, out. Lily's crying softened, but her breaths were still tight. Ethan watched her face through the fogged glass and suddenly remembered the recital program lying beside her. Victor had told him earlier that Lily played well. Ethan had answered, "Good, send flowers." He had not asked what song. He had not asked whether she was nervous. He had not asked whether she looked for him in the audience. Now his daughter was 6 inches away behind glass, and all the money in his world could not turn a stuck latch. Sam's hand stopped. "There." Ethan leaned in. "What?" "Secondary cable." "Can you pull it?" "If I pull wrong, it locks deeper." Lily coughed again, longer this time. Ethan's voice cracked. "Then don't pull wrong." Sam looked at him. There was no insult in it, only truth. "That is the plan." He adjusted the hook by a fraction of an inch. The rain kept falling. The siren wailed somewhere far away but trapped by traffic. Victor whispered into the phone. "They're still 3 blocks out." Ethan heard him. 3 blocks might as well have been 3 miles. Sam slipped the hook deeper. His fingers trembled from the cold. Ethan noticed. "Your hand. It works. It's shaking. It still works." Sam closed his eyes for half a second, not to pray, to remember the mechanism, to hear the hidden parts, to forget the crowd, to forget the billionaire, to forget the years of being stepped over. Only the door mattered, only the child, only the fragile line between stuck and open. Then Sam whispered, almost to himself, "Come on." A tiny sound answered from inside the panel. Not a click, not yet, a shift. Ethan held his breath. Lily stared at Sam's hand. The security guard stopped moving. Victor lowered his phones. Malcolm stood frozen with the useless key in his palm. Sam adjusted the hook one last time. Then he said quietly, "Ethan." The billionaire looked at him. Sam did not look away from the latch. "When it clicks, you pull. Not before, not hard, just smooth." Ethan swallowed. For the first time that night, he did not correct the man for using his first name. He simply nodded. Sam tightened his grip. The storm crashed over Meridian Tower. Lily whispered, "Daddy?" "I'm here," Ethan said. This time, he meant it. Sam pulled. Something inside the door gave way. A sound moved through the car, small, metallic, alive. Click. Part 2. The Quiet Endurance. The click was small, too small for the size of the fear around it, but Ethan Blackwood heard it like a verdict. He pulled the handle exactly the way Sam had told him to pull it. Not hard, not angry, smooth. For one frozen second, nothing happened. Then the rear door of the Voltura Asterion S7 opened into the rain. Air rushed in. Lily Blackwood fell forward with a broken sob. "Daddy!" Ethan dropped the flashlight and caught her with both arms. He pulled her out of the dead car and onto his chest, kneeling in the gutter, rainwater running down his face so heavily no one could tell at first that he was crying. But he was.
Not the controlled tear of a man moved during a charity gala. Not the polished sadness of a billionaire at a memorial speech. He cried like a father who had just seen the edge of a world without his child and knew all his money had been useless there. "I've got you," he whispered into Lily's wet hair. "I've got you. Daddy's here." Lily shook against him. "I couldn't breathe." I know, baby." "You weren't answering." The sentence cut deeper than panic had, because she did not mean only the car. Ethan felt it. He looked down at her, but she had already buried her face against his shoulder, coughing between sobs. Paramedics arrived 90 seconds later, running through the rain with a medical bag and a portable oxygen kit. The FDNY rescue truck pulled behind them, lights flashing red against the glass walls of Meridian Tower. A police cruiser stopped traffic. Victor Hale began explaining the situation in fast, polished phrases. But the emergency was already past its sharpest edge. Sam had opened the door before the professionals arrived. He stepped back while the paramedics moved in. No announcement, no demand, no victory. Just a man in a soaked coat quietly gathering his tools from the pavement, as if saving a child from a luxury car were no more than fixing a broken hinge. Ethan noticed only when Lily was seated beneath the awning with an oxygen mask over her face. Sam was rolling the canvas cloth back around the tools. The same hands that had opened a $312,000 machine were cracked, dirty, and shaking from the cold. Ethan stood, still breathing hard. "Wait!" Sam did not stop immediately. People had been calling after him for years. Most of the time, they wanted him to move along. Ethan stepped closer. "Wait!" Sam tied the tool roll with a piece of old cord and looked up. Lily watched from the paramedic's chair, eyes red, small fingers wrapped around Ethan's sleeve. Victor stood beside Ethan with a phone pressed to his chest. Security watched. The doorman watched. 2 interns watched. The entire awning had become a room with no walls. Ethan reached into his jacket. His wallet was soaked, but the black titanium card inside was dry enough. "How much?" Sam looked at the card, then at Ethan. "How much what? How much do you want?" Victor exhaled with relief. Money. Finally, something familiar. Ethan continued. "For what you did, tell me what you need. Cash, a hotel room, a doctor, a job. I can arrange anything by morning." Sam's face did not change, but something in his eyes closed. "There it is," he said. Ethan frowned. "What?" "The part where you turn gratitude into a transaction so you don't have to feel it." The awning went silent. Victor stiffened. "Mr. Blackwood is offering to help you." Sam looked at Victor. "No, he is trying to buy the discomfort off his hands." Ethan's jaw tightened. 10 minutes earlier, he would have crushed a man for speaking to him that way. But 10 minutes earlier, Lily had been behind glass. Now she was breathing, because of Sam, so Ethan said nothing. Sam looked toward Lily. "She needs warmth, dry clothes, quiet, not men yelling into phones." Lily lowered the oxygen mask slightly. "Daddy, can we go home?" Ethan turned immediately. "Yes, of course." But before he moved, Sam spoke again. "She had a recital tonight." Ethan froze. The velvet pouch sat on the wet back seat. The folded program had slipped halfway out. Sam had seen it when the door opened. Lily looked down. Victor looked away. Ethan turned toward his daughter. "You had your piano recital." Lily nodded. The rain filled the silence. "I sent flowers," Ethan said, and hated himself as soon as he heard it. Lily's voice was small. "I saved you a seat." That was the first thing money could not repair that night. Ethan looked at the program, then at Sam. The homeless man's face had gone far away, as if he were seeing another child in another place. Ethan almost asked him what he meant earlier, what he knew about children running out of calm, but Sam was already stepping backward. "Take her home," Sam said. Ethan opened his mouth. Sam lifted one hand. "Don't offer me a number, not tonight." Then he turned and walked back into the rain. No one stopped him. Not because they did not want to, because no one knew how to follow a man they had spent years learning not to see. 3 hours earlier, before the storm, Lily Blackwood had sat on a folding chair in the auditorium of St. Helena Academy on East 71st Street, wearing the same blue dress and silver ribbon. The school recital began at 6 p.m. She was scheduled as 7th. Her piece was Claire de Lune, simplified for young students but still difficult enough that she had practiced for 6 weeks every evening after homework, often stopping halfway to ask the nanny if her father had texted. The front row had a paper sign taped to one chair, reserved, Lily's dad. Her teacher, Ms. Albright, had smiled gently when she saw it. Is he coming? Lily nodded too quickly.
He said he'd try. Children learn early that try can mean yes when they are hopeful and no when they are experienced. Lily was still trying to be hopeful. At 5:42 p.m., Ethan had been on the top floor of Blackwood Technologies, standing in Conference Room A, watching a deal model shift by hundreds of millions of dollars on a curved screen. The acquisition was called Project Helios. Target company, Veltrix Automotive Systems. Proposed value, $2.8 billion. Strategic purpose, autonomous vehicle safety integration, cabin AI, emergency response software, and predictive lock control modules. The irony would not reveal itself until later. At 5:47 p.m., Lily texted him from her nanny's phone. "Daddy, please come. I saved you a front seat." Ethan saw the message. He did. He read it while Victor was speaking to legal counsel about indemnity exposure under Section 14.6 of the Veltrix draft agreement. Ethan typed, "Running late, proud of you," then deleted it. Too personal, he thought. Too likely to start a conversation he did not have time to finish. He handed the phone to Victor. "Tell Lily I'll make it up to her." Victor typed it. He had typed some version of that sentence dozens of times. Birthdays, school conferences, dentist appointments, bedtime calls. One snow day when Lily built a tiny snowman on the terrace and waited 2 hours to show Ethan before it melted. "Tell Lily I'll make it up to her." It was the sentence Ethan used when he wanted love to accept a postponement. At 6:23 p.m., Lily played. She made 3 mistakes. On the third, her eyes flicked to the empty reserved chair. Ms. Albright noticed. So did the nanny. Lily finished the piece with trembling hands, stood, bowed quickly, and returned to her seat without smiling. At 6:31 p.m., Victor sent flowers. At 6:45 p.m., Lily sent Ethan a photo of the bouquet. "Thank you, Daddy." She did not send the program. She did not send the empty chair. Children protect parents too. That was what Ethan did not understand yet. While Ethan was missing his daughter's song, Sam Carter was 3 miles south near a subway entrance on 42nd Street, repairing a plastic toy train for a boy named Mateo, whose mother sold tamales from a cart beneath a blue tarp. The train's wheel had snapped off. Mateo had cried like the world had ended. Sam took the toy, removed a bent paperclip from his pocket, heated it with a lighter, shaped it into a pin, and rebuilt the wheel joint with tape, pressure, and patience. Mateo watched with wide eyes. "You can fix anything," the boy said. Sam's hand stopped, only for a second. Then he smiled faintly. "No," he said, "not anything." The boy did not understand. His mother did. People who have lost enough can hear the weight inside a simple answer. She handed Sam a paper cup of coffee. "No charge today." Sam shook his head. "I didn't ask." "I know." That was why he accepted. Sam did not beg much. He collected broken things. Watches with missing crowns, radios with loose wires, umbrellas with bent ribs, bicycles with slipping chains. Sometimes he fixed them for people who had less than he did, which should have been impossible, but was not. Poverty has levels, and dignity moves strangely between them. The fruit vendor on 46th called him the old man who fixes things. A doorman near Bryant Park called him Professor because Sam once repaired a revolving door sensor with a paperclip and a borrowed screwdriver. Most people called him nothing. That was easier for them.
Sam slept where the city allowed him until it decided not to. Under awnings, behind warm vents, in church basements when the temperature dropped below freezing. He kept his tool roll under his arm because it was the last proof he had not always been what strangers saw. In the inside pocket of his coat, wrapped in cloth, was the yellow hair clip, Grace's hair clip. It had a tiny painted sunflower on it, chipped at one edge. When Sam's fingers touched it, he was never completely in the present. Grace Carter had been 7 when she first said the sentence that became the center of his life. "Daddy, you can fix it." A music box, a bike chain, a dollhouse hinge, a kitchen drawer, a flashlight, a toy robot that had lost one arm. Sam always smiled and answered, "I can fix it." Back then, it was true often enough to feel like a promise. Samuel Carter had not been born on the sidewalk. He had graduated from Purdue with a mechanical engineering degree, then spent 21 years designing automotive safety mechanisms, door systems, latch assemblies, emergency release cables, crash-secure locks, fail-safe redundancies for electric vehicles before most customers knew electric vehicles would become status symbols. He was the kind of engineer who could hear a motor hesitate and know whether the problem was friction, voltage drop, or a bad bearing. His colleagues used to joke that Sam did not diagnose machines. He listened to them confess. At Carter Dynamics, then later at Halden Mobility, his name appeared on 8 patents. His work helped luxury vehicles pass safety tests in markets across Europe and North America. He earned enough to buy a brick house with a maple tree in the yard and a garage where Grace sat on an old stool watching him work. On the wall above his workbench, he kept a handwritten note from Grace. "Daddy fixes everything." Then came the recall that never happened. A compact electric model called the Halden Vera had a secondary latch defect under certain moisture and voltage failure conditions. Rare, difficult to reproduce, expensive to fix. The kind of defect executives call statistically contained, until someone's child becomes the statistic. Sam found it during an internal review. He wrote a report. Subject: urgent safety escalation. Vera secondary latch failure. Case file: HMI-SAFE-17-409. He recommended immediate field inspection and software lockout revision. His director told him to soften the language. Sam refused. The report disappeared into legal review. 3 months later, Grace was riding home from a school science fair with Sam's brother when their car lost power after a minor collision during heavy rain. The doors failed. The cabin filled with smoke from an electrical short before responders could open it. His brother survived with burns. Grace did not. 7 years old, yellow sunflower hair clip, science fair ribbon still in her backpack. After the funeral, Sam testified in a deposition. He said the company had known. He produced the report. Halden's attorney said he had misunderstood the data. Executives claimed his warning was preliminary, incomplete, not approved for escalation. His own director denied the meeting. The company settled quietly with several families, not with Sam. Sam kept speaking. So they destroyed him loudly. Breach of confidentiality, defamation, mental instability, performance concerns. His wife Mara could not survive the grief and the legal war at the same time. She left after 2 years of trying not to drown beside him. The house went first, then the car, then the storage unit, then the papers he had not been able to carry. But he kept the tool roll and the hair clip. For years, Sam believed the worst thing he had lost was Grace. Then he learned grief could take more. It took his name, his work, his voice, his ability to walk past a child's cry without hearing the last thing he could not fix. That was why he crossed the street in the storm. Not because Ethan Blackwood deserved help, because Lily did. At 12:18 a.m., long after Lily had been medically cleared and taken home, Ethan sat alone in the back of another car outside his penthouse on Park Avenue. Lily had fallen asleep upstairs under the supervision of her pediatric nurse. Victor waited in the front seat, silent for once. Ethan held the wet recital program in his hands.
Lily Blackwood, piano selection, Claire de Lune. He opened it. A folded card slipped out. The paper was soft from rain. "Daddy, I saved you a front seat." Under the words, Lily had drawn 3 stick figures: herself, her mother with angel wings, her father sitting in the audience. Ethan stared at the drawing. He had lost Lily's mother, Caroline, 4 years earlier to an aneurysm no money had predicted, prevented, or negotiated with. After the funeral, Ethan told himself the best way to protect Lily was to build a world so secure nothing could touch her. Better security, better schools, better doctors, better cars, better staff, better everything. Except himself. He had mistaken provision for presence. Now the proof was in his hand, drawn in crayon, a father in a chair he had not occupied. Victor cleared his throat softly. "Sir, the jet has been rescheduled for 7 a.m. The Singapore call can be moved, but the Veltrix board wants confirmation before market open. Also, Voltura's legal department is requesting access to the car's diagnostic logs." Ethan did not answer. Victor turned slightly. "Sir?" Ethan looked at the card. "What song did she play?" Victor hesitated. "I'm sorry?" "At the recital. What song?" Victor looked down at his tablet. "I can find out." Ethan closed his eyes. Even his assistant had to find out. That was the kind of father he had become. He opened the car door and stepped into the quiet underground garage. The rain had stopped, but water still dripped from the tires of arriving cars. Somewhere above him, his daughter slept after nearly suffocating inside a machine he had trusted more than time. Ethan walked to the elevator, then stopped. He looked back at Victor. "Find the man." Victor blinked. "The homeless man?" Ethan's eyes hardened. "His name is Sam." Victor nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. What should I offer him?" Ethan looked at the wet program in his hand. For once, the answer did not come easily. "Nothing." Victor frowned. "Nothing?" "Find him first, then we listen." The elevator doors opened. Ethan stepped inside alone, and as the doors closed, he realized the most frightening part of the night was not that the car had failed. It was that a stranger had known how to reach Lily through the glass better than he did. Part 3. The pressure escalates. At 6:12 the next morning, Ethan Blackwood did something he had not done in years. He canceled everything. Not postponed, not delegated. Canceled. The Singapore investor call, the Veltrix confirmation briefing, the product launch rehearsal, the private jet to San Jose, the board dinner. Victor Hale stood in the doorway of Ethan's penthouse kitchen with a tablet in one hand and the pale expression of a man watching a machine behave against its programming. "Sir," Victor said carefully, "the Veltrix board will interpret silence as instability." Ethan sat at the marble counter in yesterday's wrinkled shirt, a cup of coffee untouched in front of him, Lily's recital program open beside it. "I'm not silent." Victor waited. Ethan looked up. "I said no calls before noon." "Mr. Blackwood, with respect, Project Helios is at a critical stage. The acquisition confirmation window closes at 10 a.m. If we delay, the market may respond before we control the narrative." Ethan stared at him. Control the narrative. That phrase had sounded intelligent in conference rooms. After last night, it sounded like something people said when they were afraid of the truth. From the hallway came the soft sound of piano keys. Not a song. Scales. Slow. Uneven. Lily was awake. Ethan turned toward the sound. Victor followed his gaze, then softened his voice. "Ms. Lily's nurse said she is stable. Oxygen levels normal. Mild airway irritation, no hospitalization needed. We were fortunate." Fortunate. Ethan looked back at the recital program. No, they had not been fortunate. A man everyone had ignored had known what to do.
That was not luck. That was the kind of knowledge the world throws away, then acts surprised when it needs it. "Did you find him?" Ethan asked. Victor hesitated. "Not yet." Ethan's eyes lifted. "Not yet?" "We reviewed exterior camera feeds from Meridian Tower. He left westbound on 47th, crossed toward 9th, then disappeared beneath the scaffolding near the old Majestic Theater entrance. Security says he is known in the area as Sam, possibly Samuel. No confirmed last name." "Then find out." "We are trying." "No," Ethan said. "Try is what I told Lily before I missed her recital. Find him." Victor lowered his eyes. "Yes, sir." Then Ethan stood and walked toward the music room. Lily sat at the piano in a soft sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders, a mug of tea untouched beside her. Her blue recital dress from the night before hung on the back of a chair, still damp at the hem. She stopped playing when she saw him. "Daddy?" He came closer, slowly, as if approaching a frightened bird. "How are you feeling?" "Okay." "Your chest?" "It only hurts a little." He nodded. The room waited for the next correct sentence. He did not know it. That was new for him. Ethan Blackwood knew how to close hostile acquisitions, fire executives without raising his voice, read market pressure before analysts could name it, and negotiate with governments across 3 continents. But standing in front of his 8-year-old daughter, he did not know how to repair the distance in her eyes. "I'm sorry I missed your recital," he said. Lily looked down at the keys. "You sent flowers." "I know." "They were pretty." "That doesn't make it better." Her fingers touched middle C, not pressing it. "No." The honesty hurt. Ethan deserved that. He sat beside her on the bench, leaving space between them. "I should have been there." Lily's voice was very small. "I kept looking." "I know." "No, Daddy, you don't." She looked at him then, and there was no anger in her face. That made it worse. "I looked after every song. I thought maybe you came late and stood in the back." Ethan swallowed. "I'm sorry." "You always say you'll make it up." He closed his eyes for a second. There it was. The invoice money could not pay. "What would making it up look like?" he asked. She thought about it. That was how far the damage had gone. A child had to consider what presence would mean. "Could you come to practice?" she asked finally. "The next recital?" "No, practice, tomorrow. Ms. Albright lets parents sit in the room if they're quiet." Ethan looked at her. Not the performance, the practice. Not the moment of applause, the ordinary hour. "Yes," he said. Lily searched his face. "Don't say yes if Victor is going to text me later." From the doorway, Victor lowered the tablet. Ethan looked at his daughter. "I will come myself." She did not smile yet, but she nodded. That tiny nod felt more fragile than any contract Ethan had ever signed. At 8:03 a.m., Victor found Sam Carter. Not through facial recognition, not through police databases, not through private security. Through a fruit vendor named Mrs. Alvarez on 46th Street, who laughed at the first security contractor who showed her a photo and said, "Now you see him?" The contractor did not understand. Mrs. Alvarez pointed toward the alley behind the old Riverton Hotel. "He fixes things by the shelter on rainy days. But if your rich boss is sending trouble, tell him I don't know anything." By 8:41 a.m., Ethan's black SUV stopped 2 blocks from the Riverton under a sky still bruised from the storm. Victor stepped out first with an umbrella. Ethan waved it away. He wore a plain coat this time, no tie, no press-ready suit. The street smelled of wet cardboard, diesel, coffee, and trash that the rain had pulled from the gutters.
A line had formed outside the church basement where breakfast was served through a side door.
Ethan did not belong there. Everyone knew it. He knew it too. That discomfort was useful. Near the alley, under a rusted fire escape, Sam sat on an overturned milk crate, repairing a small tabletop fan, while a man in a construction jacket watched. "You crossed the wires wrong," Sam said. The man frowned. "I did what YouTube said." "That was your first mistake." The man laughed. Sam connected the casing, spun the blade by hand, and tapped the motor housing once. The fan coughed, hummed, then turned. The man's face lit up. "Professor, you're magic!" Sam shook his head. "Loose contact, not magic." The man handed him a $5 bill. Sam did not take it. "Buy breakfast." "You need breakfast too." "I need you to stop wiring things like a raccoon." The man laughed again and left the bill tucked under Sam's coffee cup anyway. Then Sam looked up and saw Ethan. The humor left his face.
Victor began. "Mr. Carter."
Sam stood. The tool roll disappeared under his arm by instinct. "I told you not to send a number." Ethan stopped several feet away. "I didn't." "You sent suits." Victor looked offended. Ethan glanced at him. "Victor, wait by the car." "Sir." "Please." The word surprised both of them. Victor stepped back. Ethan faced Sam. "I came to say thank you." Sam's eyes narrowed. "You said that last night with a credit card." "I know." "So what changed by morning?" Ethan looked down the alley. A broken umbrella lay near a drain. Water dripped steadily from the fire escape. On the brick wall behind Sam, someone had written in black marker, "Keep moving." Ethan thought about Lily's hands on the piano keys. "My daughter asked me to come to practice," he said. Sam's expression did not soften, but it changed. "She asked for the right thing. I would have offered a vacation. I assumed." Ethan took that. He deserved it. "I missed her recital last night." "I know." "You saw the program?" Sam nodded. Ethan's voice lowered. "I didn't know what song she played." Sam looked at him for a long moment. "Did you ask her?" "This morning." "What did she say?" "She asked me not to let my assistant apologize for me next time." Sam gave a sad little half-smile. "Smart girl." "Yes." "Lonely girl." The words hit clean. No cruelty, no performance, just diagnosis. Ethan looked away first. "I want to help you." Sam sighed. "There it is again." "No, listen." "I have heard men like you say help." "You don't know me." Sam's eyes sharpened. "I know the type. Men who mistake rescue for ownership. Men who turn one good deed into a press release. Men who ask what someone needs, then hand them the answer they already planned to give." Ethan went still. In a boardroom, he would have responded with force. Here, in an alley, beside a man who had saved Lily, force would only prove the accusation. So he said, "Then tell me what not to do." Sam stared at him. That was the first answer Ethan gave that interested him. "Don't make me your project." "I won't." "Don't clean me up so you can feel clean." Ethan swallowed. "I won't." "Don't offer me a job before you ask why I don't have one." Ethan was silent. Sam sat back on the milk crate and picked up a tiny screw. "You want to know what I need?" "Yes." "I need men with power to stop stepping over broken things until one of them cuts their own child." Ethan felt that sentence enter him slowly. Sam continued. "I was not invisible because I lacked value. I became invisible because people who benefited from my silence found it convenient to stop seeing me." Ethan crouched across from him without thinking. His expensive coat brushed the wet pavement. Sam noticed. This time, he did not tell him to stand. "Who are you?" Ethan asked. Sam turned the screw between two fingers.
I was an engineer. What kind?
The kind who used to open doors before children got trapped behind them? The answer chilled Ethan. Vehicle systems? Safety mechanisms, door latches, emergency releases, crash-secure locks. Mostly things nobody thinks about until they fail. Where? Sam looked toward the street. Halden Mobility. Before that, Carter Dynamics. A few contracts under Draycott Engineering. Ethan's mind moved quickly. Halden, Draycott. Veltrix had acquired certain Halden patents after bankruptcy. Project Helios included legacy vehicle safety libraries. The connection flickered at the edge of thought, but did not fully form. Not yet. Sam reached into his coat and pulled out the yellow hair clip. He held it carefully in his palm. The sunflower paint was chipped. "My daughter used to sit beside my workbench," he said. "Every time something broke, she would hand it to me and say, 'Daddy, you can fix it.'" Ethan did not speak. Sam's thumb moved across the tiny plastic flower. "I believed her. What was her name? Grace?" The alley became quieter. Even the traffic seemed farther away. "She died in a car with a door that would not open." Ethan's breath changed. Sam did not look at him. "I had warned the company. Moisture exposure, voltage drop, secondary latch binding under crash-secure state. Rare failure, they said. Unproven. Too expensive to recall. Too damaging before the quarter closed." His jaw tightened. Then it happened. Ethan looked at the hair clip. "I'm sorry." Sam laughed once, without humor. "Everyone is sorry after." The line landed like metal on concrete. Ethan thought of Lily behind the glass, the fogged window, the cough, the feeling of pulling a handle that would not move. "Is that why you knew what to do?" Sam closed his hand around the clip. "I knew because failure has a sound." At 9:17 a.m., Victor approached from the car despite Ethan's instruction. He looked pale. "Sir," Ethan turned. "Not now." Victor held up the tablet. "You need to see this." Sam began wrapping his tools. Ethan stood. "What is it?" Victor glanced at Sam, then spoke lower. "Voltura sent the preliminary diagnostic log. The Asterion experienced a cabin control module fault triggered by water intrusion near the auxiliary power junction. The lock system entered crash-secure fallback. Manual override showed resistance due to secondary latch actuator misalignment." Sam stopped moving. Slowly. Ethan looked at him. Victor continued. "The engineering note says the latch architecture traces to a legacy design purchased through Veltrix's acquired safety library." Silence. The alley changed. Sam's face lost color beneath the gray of exhaustion. "What did you say?" Victor checked the tablet. "Legacy design purchased through Veltrix." Sam stood. His voice was suddenly flat. "Who owns the current Helios cabin safety module?" Ethan stared at him. "Blackwood and Veltrix. Joint development." Sam stepped closer. "Are you using inherited Halden latch logic?" Victor frowned. "That's proprietary." Sam turned on him. "So was the report they buried." Victor went quiet. Ethan's voice dropped. "Sam?" Sam's eyes were no longer tired. They were awake in the worst way. "The fault in your car last night may not be isolated." Victor shook his head. "Voltura is separate. We are not responsible for their manufacturing." Sam pointed at the tablet. "You are responsible if you are about to put the same logic into thousands of vehicles and call it innovation." Ethan looked at Victor. "Pull the Helios safety architecture files." "Sir, those are under restricted merger review."
Pull them. Victor hesitated. Ethan's voice hardened. Now. At 9:28 a.m., in the backseat of Ethan's SUV, Victor opened the restricted Project Helios data room. Rainwater still dripped from Ethan's coat onto the floor mat.
Sam sat outside the open door, refusing to get into the car, but leaning close enough to see the screen. Folder path. Project Helios / Vehicle Safety Stack / Cabin Access Controls / Legacy Integration Notes. Victor opened a PDF. Document title, Veltrix Safety Module V4.3, Emergency Egress Logic Review. Internal Risk Classification, Yellow. Review date, March 18th. Sam pointed. Scroll. Victor scrolled. Sam's eyes moved fast, not like a homeless man being shown a corporate document, like an engineer returning to a language his grief had never erased. Stop. Victor stopped. Sam read one paragraph aloud. In rare, low-voltage moisture compromise scenarios, secondary latch validation may remain engaged for 90 to 180 seconds after manual override request. Recommended mitigation deferred to post-launch software patch pending field data. Ethan felt cold. What does that mean? Sam looked at him. It means they know the door can refuse to open. Victor said quickly, It says rare. Sam turned. Rare is what they call it before the child has a name. No one spoke. Ethan stared at the sentence on the screen. Deferred to post-launch software patch. Post-launch. After customers, after families, after children in back seats, after risk became revenue. A black notification appeared at the top of Victor's tablet. Board briefing. Helios launch confirmation, 10 a.m. Dial-in opens in 21 minutes. Time entered the scene like a blade. Victor looked at Ethan. If we delay confirmation, the market will know. Sam stepped back from the SUV. There it is. Ethan looked at him. What? The price tag. Ethan looked at the screen again. Project Helios was not a small product. It was the foundation of Blackwood Technology's next decade. Predictive safety AI, autonomous cabin response, emergency access systems, a $2.8 billion acquisition, a launch campaign already filmed, investors waiting, analysts briefed, factories scheduled. Every instinct Ethan had built over 20 years told him to slow down, contain, verify quietly, avoid panic, protect valuation. Then Lily's voice rose in memory. Daddy, I can't breathe. Then another voice, one he had never heard but could almost imagine, echoed from the hair clip in Sam's palm. Daddy, you can fix it. Ethan looked at Sam. What would you do? Sam's laugh was bitter. I did what I would do. I wrote the report. They buried it. My daughter died. My name died after. I'm asking now. Sam looked toward the wet street. No. You're asking because your daughter lived. Ask yourself what you would do if she hadn't. The question hit with such force, Ethan took a step back. Victor whispered, Sir, the board opens in 18 minutes. Ethan's phone buzzed, then Victor's, then the car screen. Calls, emails, pressure, money demanding protection. Ethan looked at the Helios document, then at Sam's worn tool roll, then at the yellow hair clip, then at the tower rising beyond the street where people were waiting for him to choose the safer lie. He picked up Victor's tablet, set the board call to the emergency protocol channel. Victor stared. Sir? Now. And what should I tell them? Ethan looked at the line in the document again. Deferred to post-launch software patch. He heard Lily cough. He saw the empty recital chair.
He saw Sam standing in the rain, the only man who had known what to do. Then he said, "Tell them we found the door before it trapped someone else." Part 4. The Reveal and Authority Shift. At 9:44 a.m., Ethan Blackwood joined the emergency board call from the back seat of his SUV. Not from the executive conference room, not from the 62nd floor, not beneath the company logo.
From a wet leather seat on West 46th Street, with rainwater still dripping from his coat, his assistant sitting rigid beside him, and Samuel Carter standing outside the open door because he refused to step into a billionaire's car as if rescue had made him belong there. On Victor's tablet, the board grid appeared. 12 faces, 3 board observers, 2 legal counsel windows, 1 Veltrix executive team panel. At the top of the screen was the meeting title, Blackwood Technologies Project Helios Launch Confirmation, Emergency Session, 9:45 a.m. Case reference, BWT-HEL-SAFE-0413. Ethan stared at the title. Launch Confirmation. 24 hours ago, those words meant scale, market leadership, analyst confidence, and billions in expected value. Now they meant a child behind glass, a child coughing, a latch refusing to open, a line in a safety document saying the risk would be handled after launch. Ethan did not sit back. "Good morning," said Cassandra Vale, Blackwood's board chair. "Ethan, Victor's note said you discovered a possible safety concern. We have 21 minutes before Veltrix expects confirmation. Please be concise." Concise. Ethan looked at Sam, then back at the screen. "We are halting Project Helios launch confirmation, pending immediate safety review." The grid froze. Not technically, emotionally. Cassandra's expression hardened first. "Halting?" Graham Locke, Blackwood's chief financial officer, leaned toward his camera. "Ethan, before we use that word, we need to define scope. A delay signal at this stage could wipe 8 to 12% off market value before noon." A Veltrix executive named Nolan Pierce gave a polite, corporate smile. "We reviewed the diagnostic note Victor forwarded. It appears to concern a third-party Voltura vehicle, not the Helios platform. We strongly recommend avoiding overreaction." Sam laughed once outside the car, not loudly, but Victor heard it. Ethan heard it. Nolan's eyes moved toward the sound. Who was that? Victor hesitated. Ethan turned the tablet slightly so the camera could see Sam standing in the rain.
"This is Samuel Carter." Nolan's face did not change, because he did not recognize the man. The beard, the old coat, the split boots, the canvas tool roll. He saw only what the street had made visible. "And Mr. Carter is?" Cassandra asked. "The man who opened the failed door last night before FDNY arrived." Graham Locke frowned. "The homeless individual from the incident report?" Victor looked down. Sam's jaw tightened. Ethan's eyes did not leave the screen. "Careful, Graham." The CFO blinked. Ethan's voice stayed low. "He has a name." For the first time, Victor Hale looked ashamed, because he had written the draft incident summary at 2:14 a.m. Subject, Meridian Vehicle Malfunction, Preliminary Narrative. Line 4. An unidentified homeless male assisted at scene. Victor had typed it quickly, efficiently, without cruelty, he had told himself. But erasing a name does not require hatred. Sometimes it only requires habit. Sam spoke from outside the car. "I don't need them to like me. I need them to read the file." Cassandra leaned back. "Mr. Carter, with respect, this is a board-level product decision involving proprietary architecture." Sam nodded. "That's what Halden said." The name Halden moved through the call, small at first, then heavier. Nolan Pierce's polite smile faded by 1 degree. Ethan noticed. "Victor," Ethan said, "share the document." Victor connected the tablet to the emergency channel and brought up the PDF from the restricted data room. Veltrix Safety Module V4.3, Emergency Egress Logic Review Document. ID VTX-EGRESS-V4.3-0318. Internal Risk Classification, Yellow. Recommendation: Post-launch software mitigation pending field data. The document appeared on every screen. Ethan read the critical section aloud. In rare low-voltage moisture compromise scenarios, secondary latch validation may remain engaged for 90 to 180 seconds after manual override request. He looked up. My daughter was trapped for longer than that. Nolan's tone remained smooth. Again, Mr. Blackwood, that was a Voltura-specific event. Helios uses an adapted architecture with Blackwood predictive control layers. The risk classification is yellow, not red. Sam stepped closer to the open door. Because someone made it yellow. Nolan looked irritated. I'm sorry? Sam pointed at the screen. The failure chain is wrong. They classify it as software recoverable because they assume cabin control returns before panic conditions escalate. That is a finance classification wearing an engineering badge. The call went silent. Nolan's jaw tightened. With respect, Mr. Carter, you have not seen the full design package. Sam's voice was calm.
I saw enough in one paragraph.
That is not how serious engineering review works. No, Sam said. Serious engineering review does not defer egress failure until after launch. Graham Locke exhaled impatiently. Ethan, this is becoming emotional. We all sympathize with what happened to Lily, but we cannot derail a multi-billion-dollar transaction because an uncredentialed roadside helper interprets a technical note dramatically. There it was, uncredentialed, roadside helper. The old world trying to put Sam back under the awning. Ethan turned his head slowly toward Sam. Sam did not look wounded. That made it worse. He looked tired. Like the insult had arrived years late to a room where it already lived. Ethan faced the screen again. Victor, search Samuel Carter in the Helios patent archive. Victor's fingers moved quickly. Nolan Pierce said, That will not be necessary. Ethan looked at him. Why? Nolan's face remained controlled.
I simply mean this meeting is about launch decision, not biography. Sam smiled faintly. A biography is just a resume after powerful people stop approving of it. Victor's search results loaded. 3 entries, then 8, then 16. Victor went still. Ethan looked at him. Read it. Victor swallowed. Patent US 9,884,217. Dual path emergency release latch for electric vehicle cabin access. Inventor, Samuel J. Carter. The screen changed. Cassandra Vale leaned forward. Victor continued. Patent US-10042-663. Moisture compensated lock actuator diagnostic sequence. Inventor, Samuel J. Carter. Halden Mobility Group. Nolan's face lost more color. Victor scrolled. Internal reference document, legacy acquisition file, Halden Mobility Safety Escalation Report, case HMI-SAFE-17-409. Author, Samuel J. Carter. Subject, urgent safety escalation. Secondary latch failure under low-voltage moisture conditions. No one spoke. The rain ticked against the SUV roof. Sam looked away. The report title sat on the screen like a ghost that had finally found its way back into the building.
Ethan turned toward Nolan. You recognized his name? Nolan adjusted his tie. I recognized the case category, not necessarily. Nolan! The word stopped him. Ethan's voice was no longer the voice of a man asking for advice. It was the voice of the man who owned the decision. Did Veltrix acquire Halden's legacy safety assets? Nolan paused. Yes, certain assets. Did those assets include latch control logic connected to HMI-safe-17-409? Our engineers would need to confirm. Sam spoke quietly. They already did. He pointed at the document. See the footnote after the mitigation paragraph? HL-409 derivative note. They kept the case number buried in shorthand. Victor zoomed. There it was. Reference HL409-D/carryover validation pending. Small, gray, almost invisible, but present. Everything changed. Cassandra Vale said, Ethan, we need legal counsel to assess before we make statements. Jonas Bell, Blackwood's general counsel, spoke from a small window. If the company now has knowledge of a documented potential egress failure related to a launch product, continuing without review could materially increase liability exposure. Graham Locke looked angry. Liability exposure exists on both sides. If we halt, we trigger disclosure obligations, financing penalties, acquisition repricing, and possible shareholder claims. Sam looked at the tablet. There it is again. Graham frowned. What? The price tag. Ethan did not interrupt. Sam's voice did not rise. Every time a door fails, someone in a room like this asks what truth costs. Nobody asks what silence costs until there's a name in the obituary. Nolan Pierce snapped, That is inappropriate. Sam looked at him. So is burying a safety report. Nolan's face hardened. You are making accusations about events you clearly have personal bias about. Sam nodded. Yes. The honesty surprised everyone. He continued. My bias is that my daughter died in a vehicle with a door that would not open after I warned people who sounded exactly like you. The board call went completely still. Not because they had suddenly become moral, because the abstract had become human. Grace Carter entered the room without a photograph, without a biography, just a father's sentence. Ethan looked down at his hands. He saw Lily's fingers gripping his sleeve beneath the awning. He heard her ask if he would come to practice. He realized something that made him feel ill. Had Lily not survived, this meeting would still have happened, only with condolences first, then containment, then narrative, then valuation. He could see the machine because he had built parts of it himself. Cassandra broke the silence. Mr. Carter, I am sorry for your loss. But the board still requires verified technical assessment before we can halt a product of this scale. Sam gave a small nod. That's fair. Ethan looked at him. Sam stepped closer to Victor's tablet. Open the architecture diagram. Victor opened. Helios Cabin Safety Stack, V6 Integration Map, Section 3.2, Emergency Egress Control Pathway. Sam leaned in. His wet hair dripped onto the SUV floor mat. Victor did not tell him to move. That, too, mattered. Sam scanned the diagram for 6 seconds. Zoom lower left. Victor zoomed. Again? The diagram showed the manual override path, auxiliary power junction, cabin control module, latch actuator, and secondary validation sensor. Sam pointed. There. Your manual override still waits for secondary validation confirmation before mechanical release. That means it is not a true manual override. It is a permission request.
One of Blackwood's senior engineers, Dr. Priya Raman, appeared in a newly added window.
She had been pulled into the emergency call from the Palo Alto lab. Her hair was tied back hastily. Her eyes were sharp. "Who said that?" she asked. Ethan turned the tablet. Priya looked at Sam, then at the diagram. Sam repeated, "If manual release requires secondary electronic validation, it is not manual." Priya was silent. Nolan said quickly, "Dr. Raman, the system is designed to prevent unintended opening during crash sequence." Priya did not answer him. She was reading. Sam continued, "In a crash, you want secure retention. After crash energy drops and external manual override is engaged, you need guaranteed egress. Your logic does not separate those states cleanly under low voltage and moisture interference." Priya leaned closer to her screen. "Victor, pull simulation run 6C, the one with auxiliary power sag." Nolan stiffened. "Priya, that run was exploratory." She ignored him. Victor found it.
Simulation HEL-egress-6C. Condition: low voltage sag plus humidity ingress plus secondary actuator delay. Result: manual release latency 94 to 167 seconds. Status: accepted for post-launch software mitigation. Priya's face changed. Graham Locke muttered, "That is still within rare condition range." Priya looked at him. Rare does not matter to the person locked inside. The sentence landed differently because it came from inside the company. A witness had moved. Not a junior witness, a senior engineer. Nolan said, "We had no field confirmation." Ethan turned cold. "My daughter was field confirmation." No one answered. Then Victor Hale spoke, quietly. "Sir, there is more." Ethan looked at him. Victor's face had changed. The assistant who had spent years turning Ethan's discomfort into action items now looked like a man finally understanding what action had been avoiding. "I found an email chain from 3 weeks ago." Nolan's eyes flashed. "What email chain?" Victor read the subject line. Subject: Helios launch risk. Language: egress latency. He opened it. The thread showed messages between Veltrix Integration Council, Blackwood Product Operations, and 2 engineers. One line was highlighted in yellow. Recommend avoiding terms failure, stuck, or egress blockage in board materials. Use release latency and post-launch refinement. Ethan stared at the screen. Release latency. A child trapped behind glass had become release latency. Victor's voice shook slightly. "I received a summary of this thread in the executive prep packet. I did not flag it." Ethan turned. Victor swallowed. "I saw yellow classification and assumed it was handled. I was focused on closing materials." For years, Victor had been paid to solve problems before Ethan noticed them. Now he was admitting he had helped one disappear. "I'm sorry," Victor said. Not to Ethan. He looked at Sam, then at the screen. "I'm sorry." Sam's expression remained guarded, but he nodded once. Not forgiveness, acknowledgement. Ethan looked at the board. "This launch is halted." Graham Locke sat back. "Ethan, you cannot unilaterally—" "Yes," Cassandra interrupted. Everyone looked at her. The board chair's face was pale but steady. "He can recommend immediate halt as CEO. The board can vote on formal suspension." Graham's eyes widened. "Cassandra," she looked at him. "I will not sit on a screen and debate optics after seeing an email telling executives to avoid the word stuck." Nolan Pierce raised both hands. "We are spiraling.
Veltrix has acted in good faith under standard risk language protocols. Priya Raman's voice cut in. No, you normalized a defect because the patch was cheaper after launch. Nolan turned toward her. Careful, Priya. She did not flinch. I have been careful. That is the problem. Silence. That was the second witness. Priya continued. I requested an expanded validation cycle after simulation 6C. It was denied because launch readiness scoring would be affected.
My comment is in JIRA ticket HEL-24891. Victor searched. The ticket appeared. Comment by Dr. Priya Raman. Recommend no launch approval until manual release independence is verified under auxiliary failure conditions. Response by Veltrix. Program management. Defer. Not launch critical. Field monitoring acceptable. Nolan's image on the screen seemed smaller now. The room that had protected him was filling with records. Sam watched quietly. He had seen this moment once before in reverse, when records disappeared, when language softened, when risk became theoretical, when Grace's name had not yet been attached to the failure. This time, the evidence stayed visible. Ethan spoke. Jonas, prepare regulatory notice and voluntary safety disclosure. Cassandra, call a vote for immediate Helios launch suspension and independent engineering review. Priya, you will lead the technical freeze with authority to bypass product management. Victor, preserve every document, email, JIRA ticket, Slack thread, risk memo, and board material related to egress logic. Victor nodded. Yes, sir. Ethan looked at Nolan. Veltrix integration access is suspended pending review. Nolan's face flushed. You are making a catastrophic business decision based on panic. Ethan leaned closer to the tablet. No, panic was last night. This is judgment. Graham said, the market will punish us. Ethan's voice lowered. Then let the market punish us for protecting children before launch, instead of explaining deaths after. The sentence ended the argument. Not legally, not procedurally, morally. Cassandra called the vote at 10:13 a.m. Motion. Suspend Project Helios launch confirmation pending independent safety audit. Result: 9 in favor, 2 opposed, 1 abstention. The product was halted. The acquisition timeline collapsed within the hour. Blackwood Technologies stock fell 11.6% by market close. Financial News called it a stunning reversal. Analysts called it uncertainty. Investors called for explanation. But no child sat behind glass waiting for a software patch scheduled after launch. Not that day. At 10:28 a.m., after the board call ended, Ethan sat in silence in the SUV. Victor did not speak. Sam began rolling up his tools. Ethan looked at him. You were right. Sam kept tying the cord. That won't bring her back. I know. No, Sam said. You don't. And I hope you never do. Ethan accepted that, too. Sam stood. Now you know what the door is. Fix it. Ethan stepped out of the SUV. Help us. Sam shook his head. No. Sam, no! His voice hardened. I have sat in those rooms. I have watched men nod at truth while calculating how to bury it. I have watched people borrow my expertise and abandon my name when it became expensive. This time is different. Sam looked at him. Prove it without me first. Ethan stared at him, then nodded slowly. What would proof look like? Sam looked toward the church basement line. Make the danger public before someone leaks it. Protect the engineer who told the truth. Open the old Halden files, find the families, and stop calling people credible only after a rich man needs them. Ethan said, Done.
Sam's eyes narrowed. Do not say that like a command. Ethan caught himself. He tried again. I will begin. Sam studied him. That was better. Not perfect. Better. At 11:02 a.m., Ethan returned home. Not to sleep, not to change, to keep one promise. Lily was waiting in the music room, feet swinging above the floor, sheet music open. She looked surprised when he walked in. You came back. Ethan put his phone on the table by the door, then turned it face down. No calls. She looked at the phone, then at him. What about work? He sat in the front chair. There is work that can wait. She touched the piano keys. And if it can't? Ethan thought of the board call, the stock price, the angry investors, the halted launch.
Sam standing in the rain with Grace's hair clip in his hand.
Then I have to decide what kind of man work is making me, he said. Lily did not fully understand, but she understood enough. She began to play, slowly, wrong notes and all. Ethan did not correct her. He did not check his messages. He did not ask Victor for an update. He sat in the chair his daughter had been saving for him for longer than one night. And for the first time in years, Ethan Blackwood did not try to fix the moment. He simply stayed inside it. Part 5. The Reckoning, Legacy, and Tay. By 4:30 p.m., Blackwood Technologies had lost more money on paper than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. 11.6%. That was the number crawling across financial news banners, analyst alerts, investor threads, and emergency board emails.
Blackwood halts Helios launch over safety review.
$9.4 billion market value erased in one day. CO Ethan Blackwood faces questions after last-minute product freeze. Victor Hale stood outside Ethan's office with 3 tablets, 2 phones, and the look of a man trying to stop a flood with a calendar invite. Inside, Ethan sat alone. Not at the head of the conference table, not behind the massive desk overlooking Manhattan. On the small sofa near the window, where Lily sometimes curled up with a book when she wanted to be near him, but did not want to interrupt him. On the coffee table lay 3 things: the wet recital program, the printed Helios simulation report, and a photograph Victor had found in an archived article from 12 years earlier. Samuel J. Carter, mechanical engineer, standing beside a prototype vehicle door assembly, clean-shaven, wearing safety glasses, smiling slightly as if uncomfortable being photographed.
The headline read, Halden engineer raises safety questions before dismissal.
Ethan stared at the picture for a long time. The man in the article was not the man under the pharmacy awning, but the eyes were the same, tired, precise, and carrying a warning no one wanted to pay for. Ethan had met thousands of brilliant people in his life: engineers, founders, scientists, investors, architects of systems. But he could not stop thinking about how easily a city had stepped around this one. How easily he had almost done the same. At 5:02 p.m., Cassandra Vale called again. This time, Ethan answered. Her face appeared on the screen, controlled but strained. You need to make a public statement before the market opens tomorrow. I know. We cannot mention everything yet. Legal exposure is enormous. Ethan looked at the Helios report. We will tell the truth. Cassandra paused. The truth has levels, Ethan. That sentence is how companies start lying. She went quiet. He continued. We halted the launch because we discovered a safety risk connected to emergency egress failure under low-voltage moisture conditions. We are commissioning an independent audit. We are notifying regulators. We are preserving all communications. We are opening legacy Halden files. We are protecting Dr. Rahman and any engineer who raised concerns. And Veltrix? Suspended from integration, pending review. They will fight. Let them. Investors will ask why you trusted a homeless man over an executive team. Ethan looked at Sam's photograph. I did not trust him because he was homeless. I trusted him because he was right. Cassandra's expression changed, not fully, but enough. Then you should be prepared to say that publicly. I am. Are you prepared for what comes after? Ethan looked toward the hallway. From somewhere down the corridor, Lily's piano practice drifted through the penthouse. Slow, uneven, alive. Yes, he said. For once, I think I am. That night, Ethan did not sleep. Neither did Sam. Samuel Carter sat under the pharmacy awning on West 47th Street, the yellow hair clip in his palm, watching Blackwood's announcement replay on a small, cracked phone Mrs. Alvarez had insisted he borrow. The screen flickered. Ethan Blackwood stood before reporters in the Blackwood Technologies lobby, without a tie, without a product banner behind him, without the usual stage lighting that made crisis look like strategy. His voice came through the tiny speaker. Today, Blackwood Technologies halted the launch confirmation of Project Helios after identifying a potential emergency egress safety concern. We are notifying regulators, suspending launch activities, commissioning an independent engineering review, and preserving all related materials. A reporter shouted, Mr. Blackwood, is this connected to the vehicle incident involving your daughter last night? Ethan did not dodge. Yes. The room erupted. He waited, then continued. My daughter was trapped in a vehicle during a power and lock system failure. She survived because a man named Samuel Carter understood the mechanism when the rest of us did not. Sam's fingers tightened around the phone. Ethan looked directly into the cameras. Mr. Carter is a former mechanical safety engineer whose past warnings about similar failures were ignored by another company years ago. His expertise helped save my child. His warning may now help protect many more. Sam lowered his eyes. The rain had stopped, but the awning still dripped. Ethan continued. I have spent much of my career believing the right resources could fix any crisis. Last night taught me something I should have learned long ago. Some things must be protected before they break. Safety, trust, time with your children, the dignity of people we pass every day without seeing. The camera flashes slowed. We will not launch a product and call it innovation if the price of speed is a trapped child. The video ended. Sam sat very still. For years, powerful rooms had spoken about him without letting his name enter correctly. Disgruntled engineer, former employee, unstable witness, confidentiality breach, liability risk. Now, for the first time in more than a decade, someone with power had said his full name without using it as a warning. Samuel Carter, former mechanical safety engineer. The old identity did not return all at once, but something unlocked, not loudly, a small click. At 8:15 the next morning, the consequences began. Not cosmetic consequences, real ones. Blackwood Technologies filed a voluntary safety notice with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Consumer Product Safety Office for connected cabin control modules under review. The company retained an independent engineering panel led by Dr. Priya Raman, 2 external vehicle safety specialists from MIT and Stanford, and a former federal automotive investigator named Marlene Cho. Case file BWT-HEL-SAFE-0413. Independent Safety Review. Emergency Egress Logic. Scope: Helios Platform, Veltrix Legacy Components, Halden Derivative Latch Logic, Third-Party Integration Risk. Veltrix Automotive protested immediately. Their statement used words like premature, misleading, and commercially damaging. Then Blackwood's legal team released the preservation notice, the email chain, the JIRA ticket, the simulation run, the risk language memo, The phrase, "avoid terms failure, stuck, or egress blockage," appeared on national television by noon. Language that had been designed to hide risk became the evidence that revealed it. Nolan Pierce was placed on administrative leave by Veltrix before sunset. 2 more executives followed within the week. Veltrix's board hired outside counsel. Regulators opened an inquiry. Investors raged, commentators argued. But engineers across the country began quietly forwarding their own ignored warnings to compliance offices. That was the part Ethan had not expected. Truth does not only expose the room where it was buried, it gives other buried truths a map. At Blackwood Technologies, the culture shifted with pain. Not everyone liked it. Graham Locke, the CFO, warned that the company was overcorrecting. He resigned 3 weeks later, after emails showed he had approved language minimizing risk exposure in board materials. The product operations vice president, who denied Priya's expanded validation request, was removed from launch authority. A new rule was created and named without branding or decoration. Manual means manual. No emergency release system could be labeled manual if it required electronic permission under any failure state. Every safety escalation classified yellow or above had to be reviewed by a cross-functional committee with authority outside product management. Engineers were given protected disclosure channels that bypassed managers tied to launch deadlines. Any executive caught altering safety language to reduce perceived severity would face termination. Ethan signed every policy himself. Then he did something harder. He sent them to every employee with a letter that did not sound like corporate apology. Subject: what we almost missed. The first line was simple. We almost let speed become more important than breath. People read it twice. Some cried, some rolled their eyes. Some forwarded it, some saved it. Dr. Priya Raman printed it and taped it beside the Helios lab entrance, next to the simulation chart that had been ignored. Beneath it, someone wrote in marker, "Rare is not small when it is your child." No one erased it. Meanwhile, Victor Hale changed in quieter ways. He stopped calling people by their function when he knew their names. Not the driver, Malcolm. Not the nanny, Rosa. Not the homeless man, Sam. Small things. But small things are where disrespect rehearses before it becomes policy. 1 week after the public statement, Victor found Sam again outside the church basement. This time he came alone, no security, no tablet held like a shield, no leather folder. Just a paper envelope and 2 coffees. Sam looked at him suspiciously. "If that envelope has a check, I'm going to throw it into traffic." Victor almost smiled. "It doesn't." "What is it?" "Copies of the first restored Halden documents. Ethan thought you should see them before the press does." Sam did not take the envelope immediately. "Why didn't he bring it?" "Because you told him to prove it without you first." Sam looked at Victor. "And did he?" Victor held the envelope out. He started. That was the right word. Started. Sam took it. Inside were the old files. His files. HMI-safe-17-409. The report title. The date. His signature. His warnings. His calculations. His diagrams. His daughter had died with the truth already written down. Sam sat on the curb before his knees gave out. Victor sat beside him, ruining the crease of his expensive trousers without noticing. For a long time, neither man spoke. Finally, Sam said, "They told me I imagined the pattern." Victor's voice was low. "You didn't. They told me I was grieving too hard to be objective. You were objective. They told me nobody could verify it." Victor looked at the papers. "We can verify it now." Sam closed his eyes. There is a pain in being proven right too late. It does not feel like victory. It feels like standing outside a locked door long after the person inside has stopped calling. Victor understood enough not to congratulate him. He only said, "Ethan wants to reopen the investigation into Halden's handling of the defect, publicly, with families included." Sam looked at the yellow hair clip in his palm. Families? Yes, the settlement records, the sealed complaints, anyone affected by the original design.
Blackwood Legal is funding independent counsel for them, not company counsel. Sam looked at Victor sharply. Not company counsel? No. Why?
Victor took a slow breath. Because company counsel protects the company.
Sam studied him. For once, Victor had said the quiet part out loud.
A few days later, Ethan met Sam at the cemetery. Not because Ethan suggested it, because Sam did. Grace Carter was buried beneath a small stone near a maple tree in Queens. The inscription was simple. Grace Elaine Carter, beloved daughter. She made broken things worth fixing. Sam stood before the grave in a clean shirt Mrs. Alvarez had pressed for him, though he still wore his old coat. Ethan stood several feet back, giving distance. Lily came too. Not at first. Ethan had asked Sam's permission. Sam had hesitated for a long time. Then he said, "Children understand grief better than adults think. They just don't know why adults keep lying about it." Lily brought flowers, small yellow ones. She placed them gently near the headstone. Sam swallowed hard. "She would have liked you," he said. Lily looked up at him. "Because of piano?" "No," Sam said. "Because you asked good questions." Lily thought about that, then asked one. "Were you scared when you opened the car?" Sam smiled sadly. "Yes." "You didn't look scared." "That's because grown-ups lie with their faces sometimes." Ethan looked away. Lily nodded solemnly. "My daddy does that." Sam glanced at Ethan. For the first time, there was something almost amused in his eyes. Ethan accepted the hit. He deserved that, too. Sam stepped closer to the grave and took the yellow hair clip from his pocket. For years, it had been his proof of loss, his punishment, his last job unfinished. He knelt slowly and placed it at the base of the stone. His hand hovered there. "I couldn't fix that day," he whispered. The wind moved through the maple leaves. "But maybe I can still fix what people do with it." Ethan stood still. Lily took her father's hand. Sam did not cry loudly. He had cried loudly years ago. This was different. This was the sound of a man setting down a weight, but not walking away from love. 2 months later, Blackwood Technologies held a public safety forum in the same auditorium where the Helios launch had originally been scheduled. The original plan had included blue lights, product videos, dramatic music, and a giant screen showing autonomous vehicles gliding through future cities. All of it was gone. Instead, the screen displayed one sentence: "Safety is not a feature. It is a promise." The audience included engineers, regulators, families affected by past failures, journalists, board members, investors, and employees who had never before been invited to speak in rooms where launch decisions were made. Ethan walked onto the stage without applause music. He did not open with projections. He opened with names. Grace Carter, Lily Blackwood, Priya Raman, Samuel Carter. Then he said, "Every system we build tells the truth about what we value. If a door opens only when conditions are profitable, then it is not a safety system. It is a liability with a marketing budget." The room was silent. He continued, "I used to think leadership meant control. Control the message, control the timeline, control the market, control the room. But the night my daughter was trapped behind glass, Control did not open the door. He turned toward Sam, seated in the front row. Knowledge did. Courage did. A man the city had learned to ignore did. Sam looked down. Ethan did not turn it into sentiment. He moved to accountability. Blackwood announced a full Helios redesign, a 6-month delay, independent certification before launch, a $180 million safety reserve, a whistleblower protection fund for engineers across partner companies, a family restitution initiative tied to legacy Halden failure claims,
And the Carter Grace Fellowship for displaced engineers whose careers had been damaged after raising safety concerns. Sam had refused to let them name it after him. He insisted on Grace. Ethan did not argue. When Sam finally walked onto the stage, the applause began before he reached the microphone. He stopped. Not because he enjoyed it, because he did not know where to put it. For years, rooms had turned away from him. Now one stood. He touched the old coat draped over the back of his chair before continuing. The coat was clean now, patched at the sleeve, but still the same one from the night in the rain. He kept it there for a reason. To remind every polished person in the room that expertise does not disappear when a person loses housing. That dignity is not revoked by weather. That the world often throws away the very people who know how to save it. Sam reached the microphone. He looked older under the lights, but not smaller.
"I used to tell my daughter I could fix anything," he said. His voice shook once, then steadied. "I was wrong." No one moved. Machines are honest in a way people often are not. When a machine fails, it leaves marks: heat, wear, friction, a broken contact, a bent latch, a delayed signal. If you listen carefully, it tells you what happened. He looked across the audience. People hide failure better. We rename it, we soften it, we make it sound rare, we make it sound acceptable, we make it sound like the cost of progress. Ethan lowered his eyes. Sam continued. "But if there is one thing I want every engineer, executive, investor, and parent in this room to remember, it is this. There are things you must protect before they break." He paused. "Do not wait until the door will not open." That sentence stayed in the room long after he stepped away from the microphone. 3 months later, Sam moved into a small apartment above Mrs. Alvarez's cousin's repair shop in Queens.
Not a luxury apartment. Sam refused that. It had 1 bedroom, a kitchen window facing a brick wall, and a workbench by the radiator where he repaired radios, toys, lamps, and sometimes safety prototypes for Blackwood's independent review team. Ethan had offered more. Sam had said, "Start with enough." Enough was a word Ethan had rarely understood. Now he was learning. Sam joined the Helios Independent Safety Panel as a paid external advisor, but only after 3 conditions were met. His contract gave him full dissent rights. His findings could not be edited without his written approval, and every junior engineer on the review could escalate concerns without manager approval. Ethan signed. Sam signed. Then Sam looked at him and said, "Now we work. Not heal, not celebrate. Work." Ethan liked that. It was honest. At home, Ethan kept his promise to Lily badly at first. Not because he did not mean it, because old habits are not broken by one emotional night. The first week he reached for his phone during practice. Lily saw. He put it away. The second week, Victor appeared at the music room door with a quiet emergency. Ethan started to stand. Lily stopped playing. He sat back down. "Handle it without me," he told Victor. Victor nodded and did. The third week, Ethan arrived late by 12 minutes.
Lily said nothing. That was worse than anger. Ethan sat beside her afterward and said, "You don't have to pretend it didn't hurt." She looked at him. "It did. I'm sorry. Are you coming next week?" "Yes." "And the week after?" "Yes." "And if you miss one?" Ethan took a breath. "Then I tell you before, not through Victor, not with flowers, and I make sure it is truly something that could not wait." Lily studied him carefully. Children do not rebuild trust because adults sound sincere. They rebuild it because adults become predictable. Week by week, Ethan became more predictable. He learned Lily hated performing scales but liked making up songs. He learned she chewed her lip before difficult measures. He learned she played faster when nervous. He learned she still talked to her mother's photograph before school on hard days. He learned his daughter had been growing right beside him while he had been busy buying walls against loss. One evening, Lily asked, "Do you miss Mommy every day?" Ethan answered honestly, "Yes." "Is that why you work so much?" The question was quiet. It opened a room inside him he had kept locked for 4 years. "I think I was scared that if I stopped moving, I would feel how much I missed her." Lily leaned against him. "I miss her when I'm moving too." Ethan put his arm around her. This time, he did not try to fix the sentence. He just held her. That was harder. That was better. 6 months after the storm, the redesigned Helios emergency egress system passed independent validation. Not the first test, the third. The first failed under cold weather voltage sag. The second revealed a sensor delay in rollover simulation. Each time, product management wanted to call it manageable. Each time, Priya Raman and Sam Carter refused. Manual means manual became more than a slogan. It became hardware, mechanical independence, redundant access, cabin release visible under blackout conditions, external emergency override with moisture-shielded linkage, automatic child distress detection that did not trap control behind a dead module. And every test report included a plain language summary that could be understood by a parent, not only an engineer. When the product finally launched, it launched smaller than planned, later than planned, more expensive than planned, safer than planned. Ethan considered that the first honest success of his career. At the launch, he did not stand alone. Priya stood beside him. Sam stood beside her. Lily sat in the front row. Victor stood at the side, holding no phone. When a reporter asked Ethan whether the delay had been worth billions in lost value, Ethan looked at Lily before answering. "Yes," he said, "because the door opens." The clip went viral, not because it was dramatic, because it was clear. A year later, Lily performed Claire de Lune again, not at a school recital this time, but at a small community benefit for the Carter Grace Fellowship. The room was modest, folding chairs, bad coffee, a piano slightly out of tune. Ethan sat in the front row. No phone, no assistant, no empty chair. Sam stood at the back near the door because he still preferred exits. His hair was trimmed now, his beard neat. He wore a simple dark suit Ethan had not bought for him. Mrs. Alvarez sat beside him, dabbing her eyes before Lily even began. Lily played. She made one mistake near the middle. Her shoulders tensed. Then she looked up. Ethan smiled. Sam nodded once from the back. Lily kept going. That was the lesson. Not perfection. Continuing. When she finished, Ethan stood first. Not as a billionaire, as a father. Lily ran to him, laughing, then turned and ran to Sam. From her backpack, she pulled out a small broken radio. Its plastic case was cracked, one knob missing, antenna bent. "Mr. Sam," she said, "can you fix it?" The room laughed softly. Sam took the radio and turned it over in his hands. For a second, his face moved back through time. Grace with the music box. Grace with the toy robot. Grace saying, "Daddy, you can fix it?" Then he looked at Lily. This child was not a replacement. No child could be. But love does not betray the dead by protecting the living. Sam smiled. "This one," he said, "I can fix." Ethan heard the difference. So did Sam. Not everything. This one. That was enough. Years later, people would tell the story many ways. Some would say a homeless man saved a billionaire's daughter. Some would say a billionaire halted a multi-billion-dollar launch because of one warning. Some would say a disgraced engineer got his name back. Some would say a little girl taught her father that showing up late is not the same as showing up. All of those were true, but the real story was simpler. A door failed. A child cried. A man everyone had ignored listened. And a man who thought money could fix everything finally learned that money is only useful after humility opens the door. Because machines can be repaired with tools. Companies can be repaired with truth. Systems can be repaired with courage. But time with the people we love must be protected before it becomes memory. So if this story made you think of someone you have walked past, someone whose knowledge is hidden beneath old clothes, someone whose dignity the world forgot to recognize, write their name in the comments. If you know a parent who keeps promising to make it up later, share this with them before later becomes too late. And subscribe for more stories where the overlooked are finally heard, the powerful are forced to change, and justice begins the moment one person refuses to look away. That stormy night, Ethan Blackwood cried for someone to fix a locked car. Samuel Carter stepped out of the rain and said, "I can fix it." And he did. But what he really opened was not just a door. He opened a father's eyes. He opened a company's conscience. He opened the buried truth of a man society had thrown away. And he reminded everyone watching that the person you dismiss from the sidewalk may be carrying the one tool your whole empire is missing.